Let me tell you something. Life is not a game, but some people out here, they'll treat it like one. And if you're not careful, you'll find yourself on the losing end, not because you lack intelligence, but because you've given them the keys to the playbook. After that, if you don't value yourself, others won't either. That's the simple truth. The way you see yourself sets the tone for how others will treat you. Imagine walking into a store where the owner doesn't care about their merchandise. The shelves are dusty, the items are thrown around, and there's no sense of care or pride. What do you think happens? People come in, treat the place with the same carelessness, and leave without hesitation. That's exactly what happens when you don't see your own worth. People treat you as you present yourself. If you act like you don't deserve respect, they'll believe it. If you tolerate poor treatment, they'll assume you're okay with it. If you put everyone else first and leave yourself last, they'll take that as a sign to keep putting you last. It's not because people are inherently cruel. It's because human nature is wired to respond to the signals you send out. Self-worth isn't arrogance. It's an unshakable understanding of who you are and what you deserve. When you carry yourself with confidence, you send a silent message. I know my value and I won't accept less than what I deserve. But when you doubt yourself, when you shrink in the face of others' opinions, or when you let fear dictate your decisions, you're essentially giving others permission to treat you however they please. This often begins with small things. Maybe you allow someone to interrupt you repeatedly without addressing it. Maybe you brush off a hurtful comment because you don't want to seem too sensitive. Over time, these small allowances add up. The more you let slide, the more you teach others that your boundaries don't matter. People don't play you for a fool overnight. It's a gradual process that starts with the value you place on yourself. The problem is that many people tie their self-worth to external factors. They rely on relationships, careers, or material success to feel valuable. But what happens when those things disappear? When the job is gone, when the relationship ends, or when the validation stops? You're left questioning your worth. True self-worth isn't dependent on anything outside of you. It's about knowing deep down that you are enough, simply because you exist. When you understand your worth, you no longer seek approval from others. You don't bend over backward to make people like you. You don't tolerate disrespect just to avoid conflict. Instead, you hold your ground, knowing that your value isn't up for negotiation. This doesn't mean you become unkind or dismissive. It means you approach life with a quiet confidence that commands respect without ever needing to demand it. People who don't value themselves often find it hard to say no. They're afraid of rejection, afraid of being disliked, or afraid of losing connections. But the truth is, every time you say yes to something that goes against your best interests, you say no to yourself. Every time you put someone else's needs above your own, you chip away at your self-worth. And the more you do this, the more you teach others that your needs, feelings, and boundaries are secondary. There's also a pattern of overgiving that emerges when self-worth is low. People who undervalue themselves often believe they have to earn love or respect by constantly giving, whether it's time, energy, or resources. But overgiving doesn't make people value you more. It makes them take you for granted. The more you give, the more they expect. And the cycle continues until you're left feeling used and unappreciated. 2. Engineers by trade, They believe that they can use the right framework to manifest what they desire, resulting in the collective naming of events. Building self-worth requires unlearning these patterns. It means taking a step back and asking yourself tough questions. Why do I tolerate certain behaviors? Why do I feel the need to prove myself to others? Why do I settle for less than I deserve? The answers to these questions often reveal the root of the issue, whether it's fear, insecurity, or a lack of self-awareness. Once you identify the problem, the next step is action. You start by setting boundaries. You learn to say no without guilt. You prioritize your own needs, not out of selfishness, but because you recognize that your well-being matters. You surround yourself with people who uplift and respect you, and you let go of those who don't. When you value yourself, the world around you shifts. People begin to see you differently, not because they've changed, but because you've changed the way you carry yourself. You no longer accept crumbs when you know you deserve the whole loaf. And the beautiful thing is, once you believe in your worth, you'll never allow anyone to treat you as less again. Ignoring red flags is often the first step toward manipulation. The signs are there, small, subtle, and easy to overlook. But when you ignore them, you give people permission to treat you in ways that undermine your worth, your boundaries, and your peace of mind. Manipulation doesn't usually happen in one big moment. It's a gradual erosion of your ability to see things clearly, and it begins when you choose to dismiss the warning signs that something isn't right. Red flags often show up as inconsistencies in words and actions. Someone might say all the right things, but behave in ways that don't align with their promises. They may offer sweet words, but their actions feel distant, dismissive, or even cruel. It's easy to rationalize these moments, telling yourself they didn't mean it, that they're going through something, or that you're just being too sensitive. But in doing so, you're allowing the manipulation to take root. You're teaching them that they can cross boundaries without consequence because you'll find a way to excuse their behavior. One of the reasons people ignore red flags is the hope that things will get better. You see potential in the person, and you want to believe they'll change. You hold on to the idea of who they could be rather than facing the reality of who they are. This hope blinds you to the truth, and in trying to fix or save them, you end up sacrificing your own well-being. Manipulators thrive on this hope. They rely on your willingness to give second, third, or even fourth chances because it keeps you stuck in a cycle where they can continue to take advantage of you. Another reason red flags are ignored is fear. Fear of confrontation, fear of loss, or fear of being alone. Confronting someone about their behavior requires courage. It means standing up for yourself and risking the possibility that they might leave or retaliate. For many, the fear of being alone or rejected feels worse than tolerating the red flags. But the truth is, ignoring these signs doesn't make the fear go away. It only deepens the manipulation, as the person learns that they can exploit your fear to maintain control over you. Manipulators are skilled at making you doubt yourself. They'll twist situations, deny wrongdoing, or shift the blame onto you. This tactic, often called gaslighting, makes you question your own perceptions and feelings. Over time, you may begin to wonder if the red flags you noticed were even real. You may start to believe that you're the problem, that you're overreacting or being unreasonable. This self-doubt is exactly what the manipulator wants, because it makes you easier to control. Now, Ignoring red flags also has a cumulative effect. The more you dismiss them, the harder it becomes to recognize them in the future. Your boundaries become blurred, and your ability to trust your instincts weakens. This creates a dangerous pattern where you become more susceptible to manipulation, not just from one person, but from others as well. When you don't address the red flags, you inadvertently train yourself to accept behaviors that are harmful, and this acceptance becomes a habit that's hard to break. It's important to remember that red flags aren't always glaringly obvious. They can be subtle: a tone of voice, a pattern of broken promises, or a lack of consistency in how someone treats you. But subtle doesn't mean insignificant. These small signs often indicate deeper issues, and ignoring them only allows those issues to grow. Manipulators count on you to overlook these signs because it gives them the freedom to continue their behavior without accountability. Recognizing and addressing red flags requires self-awareness and self-respect. You have to trust your instincts and acknowledge your feelings, even if they're uncomfortable. If something feels off, it probably is. Don't ignore that inner voice that tells you something isn't right. It's there to protect you, to guide you away from harm, and to help you set boundaries that keep manipulation at bay. Standing up to red flags isn't easy, especially if you've been conditioned to doubt yourself or avoid conflict. But every time you choose to acknowledge a red flag, you reclaim a piece of your power. You remind yourself that your feelings matter, that your boundaries are valid, and that you deserve respect. Manipulators lose their hold when you refuse to ignore the signs, and in doing so you protect not just your current self, but your future self from further harm. Choosing to face red flags head-on is an act of self-respect. It's a declaration that you value your peace, your boundaries, and your well-being above the comfort of avoiding confrontation. It's about trusting yourself enough to walk away when something doesn't feel right, even if it means facing fear or uncertainty. By doing so, you break the cycle of manipulation and create space for relationships built on trust, respect, and genuine care. Trust is one of the most valuable elements in any relationship, but it is not something that should be freely given. It must be earned through consistent actions, honesty, and respect. Too often, people place their trust in others prematurely, only to find themselves betrayed or taken advantage of. This happens because trust without evidence leaves room for manipulation and deception. Evidence leaves room for manipulation and deception. When you understand that trust must be earned, you protect yourself from unnecessary pain and disappointment while setting the foundation for healthier, more authentic connections. Earning trust requires time and effort. It cannot be rushed or built overnight. Trust is cultivated through repeated actions that demonstrate reliability and integrity. For instance, when someone says they will do something and follows through consistently, they show they can be counted on. When their words match their actions and they honor their commitments, they begin to build trust. But this process takes time because anyone can appear trustworthy for a short period. It's through consistency over time that true character is revealed. One of the biggest mistakes people make is confusing words with trustworthiness. Many individuals are skilled at saying the right things to gain trust, but their actions tell a different story. They may make grand promises or offer reassurances, but if their behavior doesn't align with their words, it's a red flag. Trust is not about what someone says, it's about what they do. Words can be deceiving, but actions rarely lie. Trust is fake. Trust is not reputation. Trust is not. By focusing on what people consistently do rather than what they claim, you can better discern who is deserving of your trust. And close. Trust also requires transparency and honesty. A person who is trustworthy is open about their intentions, admits their mistakes, and takes accountability for their actions. They don't hide behind lies or half-truths, nor do they manipulate situations to serve their interests. Instead, they communicate openly, even when it's uncomfortable or inconvenient. This kind of honesty creates a sense of safety and reliability. On the other hand, someone who withholds information, avoids accountability, or is evasive in their communication should not be trusted until they prove otherwise. Boundaries play a critical role in the process of earning trust. When you set clear boundaries and communicate them, you give others an opportunity to show whether they respect you. A trustworthy person will honor your boundaries and understand their importance. They won't pressure you to compromise your values or dismiss your feelings. Instead, they will work within the parameters you've set and demonstrate that they respect your autonomy. When someone disregards your boundaries, it's a sign they may not be deserving of your trust. Forgiveness is another factor to consider. While people make mistakes, trust is tested by how those mistakes are handled. A trustworthy person acknowledges their wrongdoing, apologizes sincerely, and takes meaningful steps to make amends. They don't justify or minimize their actions, nor do they repeat the same mistakes. By contrast, someone who dismisses the impact of their behavior or shifts blame to others is unlikely to earn or maintain trust. Forgiveness may be given, but trust must still be re-earned through consistent, corrective actions. Building trust also involves emotional safety. A person who is trustworthy creates an environment where you feel valued and respected. They don't exploit your vulnerabilities or use your fears against you. Instead, they provide support, encouragement, and empathy. This emotional safety is crucial because it allows you to be yourself without fear of judgment or betrayal. If someone regularly undermines your emotional well-being, they are not worthy of your trust, regardless of how convincing their words or gestures may seem. Reciprocity is key when it comes to trust. It's not a one-sided dynamic where one person gives while the other takes. Trustworthy relationships are built on mutual respect and balance. If you find yourself constantly giving trust without receiving the same level of reliability in return, it's a sign of an unhealthy dynamic. Trust must be earned by both parties through actions that show mutual commitment to the relationship's well-being. Learning to discern who is worthy of your trust requires self-awareness and patience. It's easy to project your own values and intentions onto others, assuming they will behave as you would, but not everyone operates with the same level of integrity or respect. By observing how people handle small moments, such as keeping a promise, showing up when needed, or respecting your feelings, you gain insight into their true character. It's in these seemingly insignificant actions that trust is either built or eroded. Trust is precious, and once it's broken, it's challenging to repair. This is why it's essential to be intentional about whom you trust. By setting high standards and allowing others to earn your trust through their actions, you protect yourself from unnecessary heartache and disappointment. At the same time, you create space for meaningful relationships built on mutual respect, honesty, and reliability. Trust is not something you owe to anyone. It's a privilege that must be earned, nurtured, and valued by those who genuinely deserve it. End quote. Silence often carries more power than words, and in many situations it can be misinterpreted as permission. When you remain silent in the face of disrespect, mistreatment, or manipulation, others may see it as an acceptance of their behavior. This is not because you intend to condone their actions, but because silence creates a void that is easily filled with assumptions. Failing to speak up, set boundaries, or address the situation head-on can allow others to continue their behavior unchecked, reinforcing a dynamic where your needs and values are disregarded. When someone crosses a line and you remain silent, you unintentionally communicate that their actions are tolerable. People often test boundaries to see how far they can go, and your silence becomes an indicator of what you will or won't accept. For example, if someone disrespects you in a conversation and you choose not to address it, they may feel emboldened to continue acting in the same way. Over time, this dynamic solidifies, and the other person may begin to take your silence as consent to treat you however they please. One of the main reasons people remain silent is fear. Fear of confrontation, fear of conflict, or fear of losing a relationship. Confronting bad behavior is never easy, especially when the other person is someone you care about or someone in a position of authority. However, avoiding the issue doesn't make it go away. Instead, it allows the behavior to persist, often escalating over time. The longer you remain silent, the harder it becomes to break the cycle, as the other person grows more confident in their ability to act without consequences. Okay? Silence can also stem from a desire to maintain peace or avoid uncomfortable situations. Many people convince themselves that letting something go is the mature or peaceful thing to do. While there are moments when silence is the best course of action, it's essential to distinguish between letting something go for the sake of peace and enabling harmful behavior. True peace cannot exist in an environment where one person's boundaries and well-being are continually compromised. When you fail to address behavior that crosses your boundaries, you also risk undermining your self-respect. Each time you choose silence over self-advocacy, you send a message to yourself that your feelings, values, and limits are not worth defending. Over time, this can erode your sense of self-worth, making it even harder to stand up for yourself in the future. It becomes a vicious cycle where silence breeds more silence, and the negative behavior continues unchecked. Standing up for yourself does not mean you have to be aggressive or confrontational. Advocacy can be firm, yet respectful. It's about clearly stating your boundaries and communicating how someone's actions have affected you. For example, if someone interrupts you repeatedly during a conversation, calmly saying, "I would appreciate it if you let me finish my thoughts before responding," is a way to assert yourself without escalating the situation. By addressing the behavior directly, you leave no room for misinterpretation or assumptions. It's also important to remember that silence can have long-term consequences. Patterns of disrespect or manipulation don't just resolve themselves over time, they often worsen. What starts as a small act of disrespect can grow into a more significant issue if left unaddressed. The person engaging in the behavior may come to see you as an easy target, someone who won't push back or hold them accountable. This can lead to an unhealthy dynamic that becomes increasingly difficult to break free from. Speaking up is not just about correcting the other person's behavior. It's also about setting the tone for how you expect to be treated. When you address disrespect or mistreatment, you teach others that you value yourself and that there are boundaries they must respect. You also empower yourself by taking control of the situation instead of passively accepting it. This act of self-advocacy strengthens your confidence and reinforces your sense of self-worth. While it's natural to fear how someone might react to being confronted, it's essential to recognize that their reaction is not your responsibility. You can control how you communicate, but you cannot control how they respond. Some people may apologize and adjust their behavior, while others may react defensively or dismissively. Regardless of their reaction, the act of speaking up is a statement of your values and boundaries. It's about reclaiming your power and refusing to let someone else dictate how you are treated. Silence is not neutral. It carries weight and meaning, whether intentional or not. When you choose to remain silent, you relinquish your ability to influence the situation and leave it in the hands of others. Speaking up, on the other hand, allows you to take an active role in shaping how you are treated and ensuring that your boundaries are respected. It's not always easy, but it is necessary if you want to build relationships and environments where mutual respect and understanding thrive. Silence may feel safe in the moment, but in the long run, it often leads to greater harm. Overgiving, though often rooted in kindness and generosity, can lead to unintended consequences that leave you feeling drained, unappreciated, and even resentful. While giving is an essential part of healthy relationships, doing so excessively, without boundaries or reciprocity, can create imbalances that are harmful to both you and the people around you. Overgiving stems from a desire to help, to feel needed, or to prove your worth, but when it becomes a habit, it can lead to exploitation and self-neglect. When you give too much, whether it's your time, energy, or resources, it often goes unnoticed or undervalued. People may begin to take what you offer for granted, assuming it's your responsibility to always step in and provide support. Instead of seeing your acts of kindness as a choice, they may come to view them as obligations. Over time, this dynamic diminishes the value of what you bring to the table, leaving you feeling unappreciated and taken advantage of. Moreover, overgiving can encourage dependency in others. When you constantly step in to solve problems, offer assistance, or go out of your way to meet others' needs, you may unintentionally prevent them from learning how to handle challenges on their own. By always being the one to carry the load, you deprive others of the opportunity to grow and become self-sufficient. This not only creates an unhealthy dynamic, but also places an unfair burden on your shoulders. Overgiving is often rooted in a lack of boundaries. You may feel obligated to say yes to every request, even when it stretches you thin or compromises your own well-being. This tendency can come from a fear of disappointing others, being judged, or losing relationships. However, constantly putting others' needs above your own is unsustainable and leads to burnout. It's important to recognize that saying no is not selfish. It's an act of self-respect that allows you to prioritize your well-being and maintain balance in your relationships. One of the dangers of overgiving is that it often shifts the focus away from yourself and your own needs. You become so consumed with taking care of others that you neglect your physical, emotional, and mental health. This imbalance can lead to feelings of exhaustion, frustration, and resentment, especially when your efforts are not reciprocated or acknowledged. Over time, this neglect can erode your sense of self-worth as you begin to feel that your value is tied solely to what you can give rather than who you are as a person. Another unintended consequence of overgiving is that it can attract people who are willing to take advantage of your generosity. People who prioritize their own interests without considering yours may see your willingness to give as an opportunity to exploit you. They may continue to ask for more, knowing that you struggle to say no without ever offering anything in return. This can leave you feeling used and undervalued, further compounding the negative effects of overgiving. Overgiving also impacts the quality of your relationships. Healthy relationships are built on mutual respect, support, and reciprocity. When one person is constantly giving and the other is primarily receiving, it creates an imbalance that can strain the connection. The giver may begin to feel resentful, while the receiver may become complacent or overly dependent. For a relationship to thrive, there must be a balance of effort and energy from both sides. Breaking the cycle of overgiving requires self-awareness and a willingness to set boundaries. It's important to recognize when your giving is coming from a place of obligation, fear, or a need for validation, rather than genuine care. Taking the time to reflect on your motivations can help you understand why you feel compelled to give so much, and whether it's serving your best interests. Sometimes these reasons aren't plausible, and sometimes they lead to bad outcomes. Once you identify these patterns, you can begin to make changes that prioritize your well-being while still allowing you to be generous in a healthy and balanced way. Setting boundaries is essential to protect yourself from the negative effects of overgiving. This doesn't mean you stop being kind or supportive, but rather that you become more intentional about how and when you give. Learning to say no when something feels overwhelming or one-sided is a powerful step toward reclaiming your energy and ensuring that your generosity is appreciated rather than exploited. Boundaries also help you create relationships where both parties feel valued and respected. It's important to remember that your worth is not determined by how much you give to others. While generosity is a beautiful quality, it should not come at the expense of your own happiness, health, and self-respect. Taking care of yourself is not selfish. It's necessary. By prioritizing your needs and setting healthy limits, you create the space to give from a place of abundance rather than depletion, allowing your acts of kindness to be more meaningful and sustainable. The ability to say no is a powerful skill that can transform your life. Yet it's often undervalued and misunderstood. Many people struggle with saying no because they fear rejection, conflict, or being perceived as selfish. However, failing to set boundaries and overcommitting yourself can lead to stress, burnout, and resentment. Embracing the power of no is not about shutting others out. It's about protecting your time, energy, and emotional well-being while fostering healthier relationships and a more fulfilling life. Saying no is an essential act of self-respect. When you constantly say yes to everything, you dilute your focus and energy. You may find yourself juggling too many responsibilities, leaving little time for what truly matters to you. This not only affects your productivity, but also compromises the quality of your commitments. By learning to say no, you prioritize your own needs and goals, ensuring that you can give your best to the things and people that matter most. One of the greatest challenges in saying no is overcoming the fear of disappointing others. Many people feel an obligation to please everyone, believing that saying yes will keep the peace or maintain harmony. While this might work temporarily, constantly agreeing to things you don't want to do often leads to frustration and resentment. It's important to recognize that you cannot please everyone, nor should you try. Saying no is an act of honesty and authenticity, allowing you to communicate your boundaries clearly and assertively. It's a way of showing respect for yourself and for others, as it sets the foundation for open and genuine interactions. Saying no also helps you reclaim control over your time. Time is one of the most valuable resources you have, yet it's often squandered on obligations that don't align with your values or priorities. Every time you say yes to something, you're effectively saying no to something else, often something more important to you. By saying no to tasks, invitations, or responsibilities that don't serve your goals, you free up time to focus on what truly matters. This could be pursuing your passions, spending quality time with loved ones, or simply resting and recharging. Another benefit of saying no is that it creates space for better opportunities. When you're constantly saying yes, you may find yourself stuck in situations that leave little room for growth or new experiences. By setting boundaries and declining things that don't align with your vision, you make room for opportunities that are more aligned with your values and aspirations. This shift in mindset allows you to approach life with greater intention, choosing commitments that genuinely resonate with you. The power of no also lies in its ability to protect your mental and emotional health. Overcommitting yourself can lead to feelings of overwhelm and exhaustion, which take a toll on your well-being. When you learn to say no, you set limits on how much of yourself you're willing to give. This doesn't mean you stop helping others or being generous, but rather that you do so within healthy boundaries. Be committed and consistent. When people learn to know you, they will be more willing to commit to you. Protecting your energy ensures that you're able to show up fully for the things and people that matter most, without compromising your own health and happiness. It's important to remember that saying no doesn't have to be harsh or confrontational. You can decline with kindness and tact, expressing gratitude for the opportunity while being firm in your decision. For example, you might say, "I appreciate you thinking of me, but I can't commit to this right now." This approach not only reinforces your boundaries, but also maintains positive relationships, as it communicates your decision in a respectful manner. The fear of missing out can also make saying no difficult. You might worry that by turning something down, you're passing up a chance that won't come again. However, this fear is often unfounded. Trusting that the right opportunities will come your way when you're aligned with your values can help you make decisions from a place of confidence rather than scarcity. Saying no allows you to stay true to yourself, even in the face of external pressure or expectations. The power of no is about creating a life that reflects your priorities, values, and aspirations. It's a tool for setting boundaries, preserving your energy, and fostering meaningful relationships. By embracing this power, you take control of your time and decisions, ensuring that your life is guided by intention rather than obligation. Learning to say no is not about rejecting others. It's about honoring yourself and your journey, making space for the things that truly matter.